Thank you, Nina and Ricky. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for NET25 World News. On tonight's headlines. A developing story along the volatile western border of India, where a dangerous escalation of conflict with neighboring Pakistan is unfolding. Overnight and into early Friday, the Indian Army reported a significant surge in hostilities, accusing Pakistani armed forces of launching what they described as, quote, multiple attacks utilizing drones and other munitions. With just days to go before the 2025 Philippine general election on May 12, the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, assured the public that all systems are go for a smooth and secure voting process.
Handa po ang COMELEC. Siyempre, lagi-lagi sa isang operation, sa isang ganito, meron biglang pumapasok na problema, issue. Ang importante, intact yung aming contingency measures, intact yung aming operation plan sa kung ano ang gagawin ng komisyon pagka mga ganito.
A developing story along the volatile western border of India, where a dangerous escalation of conflict with neighboring Pakistan is unfolding. Overnight and into early Friday, the Indian Army reported a significant surge in hostilities, accusing Pakistani armed forces of launching what they described as, quote, multiple attacks utilizing drones and other munitions. Take a look.
Shelling from Pakistan damaged several religious sites and homes in Indian Kashmir near the Pakistani border on the second day of major clashes between the nuclear-armed neighbours on Thursday. Residents here are calling for a ceasefire after a statement released by the Indian government said 16 lives were lost in the cross-border fire. It comes as Pakistan said it shot down 25 drones from India in its airspace on Thursday. India said it neutralized Pakistan's attempts to strike military targets with drones and missiles. The fighting has spread a day after India said it hit terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan in the early hours of Wednesday. This footage, posted by the Indian Army on X, whose date and location was unable to be verified by Reuters, is said to show terrorist camps being destroyed in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The escalation has been sparked 2 weeks after India accused Pakistan of involvement in an attack on Indian Kashmir in which 26 people, mostly Hindu tourists, were killed. Islamabad had denied the accusation and vowed to retaliate to missile strikes.
India has created a hype since yesterday about Pakistan attacking 15 locations. The 15 locations they're talking about.
It is such a fantastic and cooked up story that you can just laugh about it. I'll ask few questions on this. The first question is is the Indian government and the armed forces, are they living in 18th century or 21st century? Because in 21st century, every projectile leaves a digital trace and signature.
Pakistan says at least 31 of its civilians were killed and dozens wounded in Wednesday's strikes and in cross-border shelling across the frontier in Kashmir. Pakistan's information minister told Parliament Pakistani forces had killed 40 to 50 Indian soldiers on the de facto border and blown Indian military installations.
At the line of control, we have not only killed 40 to 50 Indian soldiers, but we have also destroyed their brigade headquarters, and you saw the fire. I'm not talking about a unit. In conventional warfare, destroying an entire brigade headquarters is a major success.
On Thursday, Indian government ministers in New Delhi said the strikes on Pakistan had killed more than 100 terrorists and that the count was still ongoing, government sources said. Both governments have pledged to respond if one attacks the other. However, ministers from both sides have said they don't intend to escalate the situation or are ready to de-escalate. The US, China and Russia have urged both sides to show restraint in the interests of peace and stability and have offered support. The relationship has been fraught with tension since India and Pakistan gained independence from colonial Britain in 1947. The countries have fought 3 wars, 2 of them over Kashmir, and clashed countless times.
And tensions continue to simmer in the South China Sea as China voices strong opposition to joint patrols recently conducted by the Philippines, the United States, and Australia.
The current situation in the South China Sea is generally stable. Countries enjoy the freedom of navigation and overflight there in accordance with the law, and there is no problem with that. In carrying out activities in the South China Sea, all countries should observe international law and act in the spirit of the Declaration on the Conduct of Parties, DOC, in the South China Sea, and should not target any third countries or endanger regional peace and stability.
But Lin didn't stop there. He accused the Philippines of violating international agreements and stirring up trouble at sea.
The Philippines has violated international law and the DOC and frequently made infringements and provocations and made troubles at sea, enticing and acting in concert with forces outside the region to mess up and flex muscles in the South China Sea. It is reconciled to make itself a chess piece of others, and in the end it will swallow the bitter result it has made on its own. The United States and other countries outside the region have constantly cobbled small cliques in the South China Sea, stoking confrontation in the name of cooperation, flexing muscles in the name of freedom, and sowing chaos in the name of order. They are the utmost source of risk undermining peace and stability in the South China Sea.
China, Lin said, is committed to safeguarding its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights.
China always firmly safeguards its territorial sovereignty and maritime rights and interests and is resolutely committed to working with other countries in the region to maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea. China advises relevant countries to cease forming cliques and stirring up troubles in the South China Sea and stop undermining regional peace and stability.
And staying in the West Philippine Sea, tensions remain high as Chinese maritime forces continue to show increased aggression toward Filipino naval vessels patrolling the disputed waters. The Department of National Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro Jr. said he expects this pattern of aggressive behavior to continue, especially around Scarborough Shoal, also known locally as Bajo de Masinloc. And this comes after a May 5 incident where 2 Chinese frigates and a China Coast Guard vessel conducted what the Philippine military called aggressive and unsafe maneuvers against the Philippine Navy's offshore patrol vessel BRP Emilio Jacinto. Now, videos from the patrol showed 1 Chinese frigate dangerously crossing the bow of the Philippine ship, while another tailed it closely, actions that risked collision and violated international maritime rules. A China Coast Guard ship also attempted to block the Philippine vessel's path, further escalating the situation about 11.8 nautical miles southeast of Scarborough Shoal. Despite these provocations, Secretary Teodoro stressed that the Philippines remains undeterred. Filipino naval forces will continue their routine patrols in the area, which is part of the country's sovereign jurisdiction.
Well, I mean, it is obvious which country does not adhere to the rule of law here. It is only China. I mean, it's bukod tangi po sila. No? Valedictorian po sila saka hindi kasusunod ng rule of law. Kung may ginawang tama yung bansa na yan, yun. Ngayon, hindi bansa, baguhin ko, yung partido na nangangasiwa sa kanila. Ngayon, of course, hindi pwede siguro akong ma-disappoint sa latest na nangyayari. Hindi disappoint yun, expected yun eh. I mean, kaya kailangan paghandaan itong mga ito, no? At tutulan, no?
Sir, reaction na po doon?
More of the same. I mean, alangan naman hindi natin gawin ang katungkulan natin sa ating jurisdiction sa ilalim ng batas. Hindi pwede yun. Sila ba nagdidikta ng batas ng mundo? Hindi.
The largest ever Balikatan exercises between the Philippines and the United States have officially come to a close, wrapping up 3 weeks of intensive joint military training. This 40th iteration of Balikatan featured around 17,000 troops, including 5,000 Filipino and 10,000 American personnel, along with forces from Australia and observers from 19 countries worldwide.
Of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, and by virtue of the authority vested in me as the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, I hereby declare Exercise Balikatan 40-2025 officially closed. Congratulations to everyone. Mabuhay tayong lahat.
What set Balikatan 2025 apart was its full battle test, a comprehensive simulation that integrated real-world forces with virtual and constructive scenarios across all domains: air, land, sea, space, and cyber. The exercises included missile defense drills, maritime strike operations, humanitarian civic assistance, and command and control exercises, all designed to sharpen interoperability and readiness between the allied forces. For the first time, the drills showcased advanced systems like the Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, a ground-based ship killer missile, as well as integrated air and missile defense simulations. The exercises took place across Luzon, Palawan, Visayas, and Mindanao, underscoring the broad scope and strategic importance of the drills in defending Philippine sovereignty. Officials from the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the U.S. Marine Corps emphasized that Balikatan remains a vital demonstration of the enduring alliance under the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Each year, Balikatan has grown in complexity and ambition, matching the pace of our flourishing bilateral relationship. Balikatan 2025 included a full battle test, during which our forces had the opportunity to engage all services in all domains in a simulated scenario designed to test our readiness to respond to any crisis together. This is the first time Balikatan has included such a simulation, demonstrating our alliance's ability to deliver peace through strength. Off the battlefield, U.S. and Philippine forces work shoulder to shoulder on humanitarian projects to provide infrastructure, supplies, and essential services to 300,000 Filipinos in 5 communities, a total investment of over 88 million pesos.
From forces of different persuasions who do not understand the rule of law, who do not understand good faith, and whose perceptions of what good faith are may differ from ours, the best way to make ourselves more resilient is to build strong fences. And these exercises, together with exercises with and amongst our partners and future partners, are part of those fence posts that we need to build in order to deter any malign actor from interfering with what international law provides each and every one of us.
With just days to go before the 2025 Philippine general election on May 12, the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC, assured the public that all systems are go for a smooth and secure voting process.
Handa po ang COMELEC. Siyempre, lagi sa isang operation, sa isang ganito, meron biglang pumapasok na problema, issue. Ang importante, intact yung aming contingency measures, intact yung aming operation plan sa kung ano ang gagawin ng komisyon pagka mga ganito. Sana, sa ganung pagkakataon, sana po walang postponement ng eleksyon na mangyayari at sana wala ng failure of election sa kahit na anong presinto sa buong bansa.
On election eve, May 11, all forms on campaigning are strictly banned. Candidates and their supporters are also prohibited from giving or receiving free transportation, food, drinks, or anything of value. A liquor ban will be in effect except in authorized tourist establishments. Come election day itself, May 12, campaigning and vote solicitation are not allowed within 30 meters of polling places. Voters are reminded that voting more than once or voting for another person is illegal and punishable by law. Also banned on election day are the opening of stalls or selling of goods near polling stations, as well as holding fairs, cockfights, or similar events that could disrupt the voting process.
Babala natin pagkatapos bumoto o bago bumoto, huwag na lang pong ikot ng ikot sa polling place kasi baka ma-consider pa yan na pangangampanya. Dapat po dire-diretso na lang sa pagboto, dire-diretso na rin tayo sa ating pong pag-uwi.
As we gear up for Monday's midterm elections, the Bureau of Fire Protection is taking extra precautions to ensure public safety. The BFP has declared a red alert status starting today, mobilizing around 32,000 personnel across the country.
As to the figures, lahat tayo sa field ng Bureau of Fire Protection ay ongoing ang roving, ang fire truck visibility po natin. Ang ibigay ko na lang po siguro yung data on mga inspected polling precincts which are nasa 22,946. And out of that, around 5,571 po yung ongoing nga po ang compliance nila. Again, yung atin pong mga firefighters sa field units natin, sa mga fire stations ay ongoing po ang conduct ng fire inspection at fire truck visibility.
Meanwhile, the Commission on Elections has also announced special voting hours to make the May 12 elections more accessible for senior citizens, persons with disabilities, and persons deprived of liberty voting in jail facilities. COMELEC spokesperson John Rex Laudianco said these voters will have exclusive early voting hours from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. at their assigned precincts. Now, this is designed to give them a safer and more convenient voting experience.
Nalawig po ang oras ng botohan mula 5 a.m. po hanggang 7 a.m. ay para lamang eksklusibo senior citizens, persons with disabilities at pregnant women. Talagang itinalaga po ito para sa kanila, hindi tayo makasabay na regular na botante. Ang regular voting hours po ay mula 7 a.m. hanggang 7 p.m. Pero halimbawa po yung mga vulnerable sectors na ayaw gumising ng maaga, pwede naman po bumoto doon sa 7 a.m. sa 7 p.m. Priority pa rin po doon po sa ating persons deprived of liberty na pabobotohin po namin doon sa mga jail facilities. Ang inyong pong pagboto ay mula 7 a.m. hanggang 3 p.m. dahil po yung kanilang balota na gagamitin ay dapat pong madala sa presinto na pinagkunan at maisama doon sa mabasa at maitransmit.
COMELEC also reminded the public about some important do's and don'ts to keep in mind on Election Day. He said voters are allowed to bring their cell phones to the polling precincts, but using them inside the voting area is strictly prohibited.
Na po sa lahat, bawal po gumamit ng cellphone. Hindi po namin kayo babawalan na dalhin ninyo ang cellphone, ngunit hindi po kayo papahintulutang gumamit niyan. Bawal na bawal po kunan ng inyong pagboto, ang inyong balota, ang pag-feed sa ACM, lalong-lalo na screen at yung resibo kung saan makikita ang balota, ang boto ninyo. Yan po ay isang election offense, kasong kriminal po yan. Pero ang pinakamaganda po, payo namin, pagdating ninyo sa paaralan, may listahan na po kayo. Based on our time and motion studies, yung may listahan na. Napakabilis mo matapos, 5 minuto, tapos na. At ito po pinakamaganda, responsabling pagboto dahil hindi po nanguhula kung sino na lang iboboto.
Today, Russia marked the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II with a grand parade in Moscow's Red Square. Chinese President Xi Jinping was a special guest, attending amid tight security measures put in place to guard against any possible Ukrainian attacks after 3 years of devastating conflict. Take a look.
Для встречи слева! Накра! Ух!
Здравствуйте, товарищи! С 80-й годовщиной Победы!
Side by side with China's Xi Jinping, Russia's Vladimir Putin marked the 80th anniversary of the Soviet Union's victory over Nazi Germany in World War II on Friday. A major military parade in Moscow went off without any reports of Ukrainian attacks, with 3 years of devastating war as a backdrop. In a speech in Red Square, Putin said Russia would never accept attempts to belittle the Soviet Union's decisive role in defeating Nazi Germany, but recognize the role of Western allies.
We will always remember that the opening of the second front in Europe after decisive battles on the territory of the Soviet Union brought the victory closer. We highly value the contribution to our common struggle by the soldiers of the Allied armies, the resistance fighters, the courageous people of China, all those who fought for a peaceful future.
Putin made no criticism of the West and referred only in passing to the Ukraine war, Europe's deadliest since World War II. Drones were paraded for the first time, as well as tanks and intercontinental missiles capable of carrying nuclear warheads. More than 11,500 troops lined up, including 1,500 who have fought in Ukraine. Chinese troops took part in the parade, and Putin shook hands with North Korean officers, praising them for their fighting skill. North Korean soldiers have helped Russia fight an incursion into its western Kursk region by Ukrainian forces, seeking a bargaining chip in any peace talks. The Kremlin says the attendance of Russian allies, such as Xi, Brazilian President Lula da Silva, and several dozen leaders from around the world shows Russia is not isolated. Ukraine attacked Moscow with drones for several days this week, though there were no reports of major attacks on Moscow on Friday, amid a 72-hour ceasefire declared by Putin. US President Donald Trump on Thursday called for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine and said if the truce was not respected, then the US and its partners will impose further sanctions. In Kyiv, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on allies to help it resist Russia, which now controls about a fifth of Ukraine.
U.S. President Donald Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have announced a limited bilateral trade agreement. Now, the deal leaves in place Trump's 10% tariffs on British exports. It modestly expands agricultural access for both countries and lowers prohibitive U.S. duties on British car exports. Thomas I Likeness for more.
Trump made the announcement Thursday in the Oval Office. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer joined the announcement by phone from London. The UK is the first country to secure a trade deal with the Trump administration, although the agreement is more of an outline of a deal. A number of details still have to be worked out. Starmer says British workers will benefit from the agreement.
And that is a deal that will protect British businesses and save thousands of jobs in Britain. Really important, skilled, well-paid jobs. It will remove tariffs on British steel and aluminium, reducing them to zero. It will provide vital assurances for our life sciences sector, so important to our economy, and grant unprecedented market access for British farmers without compromising our high standards.
Trump is hailing it as a big deal, and he says he welcomes greater access to the United Kingdom's markets.
With this deal, the UK joins the United States in affirming that reciprocity and fairness is an essential and vital principle of international trade. The deal includes billions of dollars of increased market access for American exports, especially in agriculture, dramatically increasing access for American beef, ethanol, and virtually all of the products produced by our great farmers.
Investors seemed encouraged by the deal, which fueled a rally on Wall Street. Trump has been under pressure from investors to strike deals and de-escalate his trade war. Investment strategist Marianne Bartels says the deal with the UK is encouraging.
We're having a great reaction, and that's primarily due to the tariffs, again, coming to a resolution with the United Kingdom, with the UK. And I kind of feel with tariffs, it feels like 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, 2 steps forwards, 1 step back, but we're trending higher in the markets. So I really like the market reaction. I think it's doing very well. It doesn't mean that we can't have more volatility, but I think the worst is over for the markets. I think the low is already set.
Business leaders in both countries expressed disappointment that a number of British imports, including cars, still face a 10% tariff, although that's down from the current 27.5%. Economist Olivia O'Sullivan says it's a bit of a win for the UK, but she remains skeptical because of the lack of details.
What Starmer seems to have secured are reductions in the tariffs on cars and on steel and aluminium. So that is something of a win for the UK, and those industries will get some relief as a result of the negotiating that the UK government has done. But we should be a bit cautious because we haven't seen a lot of detail. And also because Trump in the past has gone back on deals that he's made with countries.
O'Sullivan says while some benefits have been gained in this agreement, getting a long-term deal will have its challenges. And she says part of the difficulty is trying to figure out what Trump's goals are and how to approach him.
We could argue that the Starmer government's approach of being quite careful in its approach to the Trump administration, engaging to some degree in kind of flattery and not responding to every outrageous thing that Trump says, has yielded some dividends, but the long-term strategy is still going to be challenging. This deal is very light on details. These exemptions will help some industries, but the trade relationship with the US remains highly uncertain when it's not clear what Trump's overall strategy is.
Thursday's agreement comes ahead of this weekend's meeting between American and Chinese trade officials. They're meeting in Switzerland. Trump says he expects the negotiations to be substantive.
Now China wants to do something, and look, they have to at this point. You know, essentially, they made $1 trillion a year, and now they have absolutely, no business because of the tariffs. They have no business, and they want to have business, and we want them to have business. We want them to do well. We want them to do very well. So I think it's going to be very substantive.
Trump says he may meet with China's President Xi in the future. Thomas I. Likeness, NET25 World News.
And the news continues here on NET25. We'll be right back. President Trump is once again publicly criticizing Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, this time over interest rates. And he claims the Fed is refusing to lower rates, which he says would be a major boost to the economy.
Go ahead, please.
The Federal Reserve Chairman, Mr. President, says that you would have to call him for a meeting. You plan to meet with him. What do you think about him?
It's like talking to a wall. He should be.
I'm not cutting. The Bank of England cut.
Well, the Bank of England cut. China cut. Everybody's cutting but him. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It's a shame. I call him Too Late, Too Late Powell, that's his nickname, and it's a shame, it's ridiculous. So, meeting, he's always too late. But in this case, it's not going to matter that much because our country is so strong.
The president went further, suggesting that Powell is intentionally refusing to lower rates due to personal animosity.
If the chairman of the Fed, Jerome, if he would lower interest rates like China did, like I think UK did, but like numerous other countries have done, it's like jet fuel, it'd be great. But he doesn't want to do it. I think he doesn't want to do it. Probably he's not in love with me. I think that's right. It's sort of a crazy reason, but that's the way life is. Anybody in his position would be like, it would be like jet fuel. But even without that, we're doing well. But remember that.
The Fed, however, held interest rates steady this week, maintaining the current range. When asked directly about the president's public pressure, Chair Powell was clear.
So then how does President Trump calling on you personally as well as the Federal Reserve to make rate cuts affect your decision today and affect your job difficulty?
Doesn't affect our doing our job at all. So we're always going to do the same thing, which is we're going to use our tools to foster maximum employment and price stability for the benefit of the American people. We're always going to consider only the economic data, the outlook, the balance of risks, and that's it. That's all we're going to consider. So it really doesn't affect either our job or the way we do it.
Bill Gates is sounding a stark alarm, saying that cuts to the U.S. foreign aid budget, spearheaded by Elon Musk's department, will lead to a tragic increase in global debts. The billionaire philanthropist, who pledged to donate $200 billion through his foundation by 2045, warned in an interview that decades of progress in reducing mortality are now at risk of being reversed within the next 4 to 6 years due to these funding reductions.
For global health, we can divide into 3 periods. We've got the last 25 years, which have been miraculous, and we've had a chance to be part of that, including things like Global Fund and Gavi. Then we have the next period of time, could be 4 years, 6 years, where we're having funding cuts from a number of countries, including the U.S., and the number of deaths will start going up for the first time. They went down from around 10 million to less than 5 million, and now, it's going to be millions of more deaths because of the resources. If you zoom out, though, and look at the next 20 years, and the fact that I think governments will come back to caring about children surviving, and that we have a pipeline of innovation, and that my fellow philanthropists, I think, will be giving more to these causes.
And with that, we end tonight's broadcast. For everyone here on NET25, have a great weekend. I'm Alma Angeles. Good night.